Entrepreneur, author, and financial consultant Mar Bernstein helps high-performing entrepreneurial business owners create a vision for the future and follow through on their goals and intentions. Onorato is a business growth strategist who blends psychology and business together to create conscious leaders and business owners who impact the world. Founders Forum is a radio show podcast sharing the real stories behind entrepreneurship as founders discover more about themselves while providing valuable lessons and some fun and entertainment for you. Now, here's Marc and Ange.
Good morning, America. Good morning, Ange. Good morning, Arlo. Good morning to our guest, Dr. Bruce Grossinger. Good morning. I'm sorry, Arlo, I didn't get to walk you this morning. I'm fighting a cold here, and we're going to do the best we can, pumping up with liquids as we do this. And it's going to be a great day on the show today. I can tell we're going to have a lot of fun today. So I have a thought for the day, Ange. It's a quote, and it's by Benjamin Disraeli. Success is the child of audacity. How does that resonate with you?
You know, I love that because we talk a lot about, taking risks and failures and things of that nature. But I love audacity because a lot of times, and all we do all day is talk with entrepreneurs, right? And sometimes it's not about all the things, but it's about the stories in our head. And sometimes we just need to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to be so outrageous and audacious to believe that I can do this. And that's the jumping off point, I think, for a lot of people. So I love that. And I embody that in more of a mental way than all the other things come behind that, right?
Yeah, I will just say in my business, I don't think most people would look at me and say, hey, he's an audacious guy, except unless they see me on stage, jumping off the stage and stuff like that. But in general life, I don't think people view me as audacious. But our model for our business, you and I were talking about it this morning, is so unique. And it's a vision I've been chasing for a lot of years, and we're pretty much there now. That I think that was different because I think we're disruptors in the financial services industry, and there are very few like us. So I think about that a lot, actually. And I picked that quote because of our guest, Dr. Bruce Grossinger. As I mentioned, I usually don't introduce him until after this discussion, but I think that would be a good jumping off part. So I'll give you his background. He's founder and CEO of Grossinger Neuropain Specialist and Philadelphia PRP and Stem Cell Institute, a subject I'm very interested in. And he also is the host, along with his son Spencer, of Rover Sports on this very station, WWDB AM in Philadelphia, and has a podcast as well, and we'll get into that a little bit too. But Bruce, talk about audacity and how you see yourself in that realm.
Well, I've always thought of myself as a guy who is bold. Particularly when I was younger, I tackled a lot of challenges. When I went to Delaware County, there was one neurology group with 15 people. Nobody had the audacity to compete with them. I went to their, this was a different time in 1990, where I was able to go to their main jewel hospital, Taylor Hospital, and I was able to kind of demand, back in those days, a six-figure salary, a rent-deferred office, and I told them I would cover their hospital 24/7, and basically the big group from Grossinger that kind of didn't really focus on this place, so I basically drove them out like vermin, and they just didn't know how to. They didn't know how to read me at all, and they didn't figure me out. And ironically, after about 6 years of hospital work, I made a business decision to go purely outpatient, to develop 3 operating rooms, and more or less what I had taken and won over, I gave it back to them. I gave Taylor Hospital back to them, and to this day they haven't figured me out. So I've always liked I've had a lot of confidence in myself. I did many fellowships, so I knew exactly how to run a neuro practice, nerve and muscle lab, epilepsy lab, spinal cord monitoring, sleep studies. So as one guy, I was able to basically do the same thing as their 10 guys, and I had the energy to do it. And so, that's how I got started. So it took some audacity and courage to do it, but I've achieved, I guess whatever the metrics of successes are, in my own mind and perhaps in the community, I've achieved in far exceeded my goals initially.
Nice. Most entrepreneurs have faced challenges, and in prepping for the interview, you and I talked about you you were a guy that you said you were always last in, so it was kind of a challenge.
Well,
there's
a guy.
From behind.
There's a guy I really like. His name is PJ Fleck. He's the coach of Minnesota Golden Gophers, and he always had the law of twos. And I think I'm inspired by him, that he's always too small, too slow, and too white, perhaps. But this guy was always the guy who was the last guy there and always tried the hardest to succeed. So the law of twos. So I would say I was always reaching ahead. I went to Lehigh University, but I tried really hard. I didn't want to take a gap year, and I managed to get that last spot in medical school class and succeed, finish in the top, and then attack a neurology residency at New York Medical College. And as the only osteopathic doctor, I was able to nab that 12th spot. And then at Stanford, there are no DOs in the whole area. I was able to get my fellowship at Stanford. So I was always able to struggle and get that last spot. I had to claw and struggle. Growing up in Delaware County to a widowed mother with 3 boys that you know well, was not an easy situation. I had to, get scholarships, and my mom worked multiple jobs. So I guess growing up at a split level in Havertown, it was always hard work. There was no other choice. There was no safety net. So I think that's to highlight the audacity of a 33-year career. I guess that would be, in a nutshell, that's as concise as I could be.
Full disclosure, by the way, Bruce and I have known each other almost our whole lives. Our mothers and our parents were very good friends. Fathers are gone, but our mothers are both listening today. So, hi, Mom.
As our dads. As Uncle Irv, my favorite guy, with his cigar.
Yeah, he always had a cigar in his mouth, my dad. And we were talking about Murray, your dad, who I, have very fond memories, even though I was very young. That guy also.
Yeah, my dad, he passed away when I was 10. He was 38. He had rheumatic heart disease, sudden death. But he left a tremendous legacy. Like, he was an executive in sales and paper, and he was also a media guy. He was a magician.
Our fathers did business together.
Murray the magician in Pittsburgh. So
right?
I have pictures of him. So we're both somewhat, very much extroverted, I guess you could say.
Well, I don't know if you know this little bit, but my father, he always said, I don't know what I'm going to do when I retire. So I was always talking about that. And I said, you got to do something. And he said, at some point, maybe I'll be a musician. And I said, okay. So I bought him for holidays that year. I bought him a keyboard, never touched it. So he kept thinking about it. And he finally retired. He got sick very shortly after that. But just before he did, he decided he wanted to go to clown school. I don't know if you know this. And he became Bernie the Clown.
My sister did that, was a clown for years.
Well, he was such an extrovert, such a wonderful guy. Nothing would surprise me about him.
So I guess we're getting too personal. But anyway, we're glad our moms hopefully are listening today, if they could get through the technology to be on with us today. So, hey, so let's talk a little bit about your son and Rover Sports and what you guys are doing together there. And I know that's somewhat of an outgrowth because I know you work with a lot of sports figures in your practice.
My son's much more talented than me in sports. He's followed sports since he was a small child, and we've been doing fairly organized television, radio, podcasts right now. So you always want to put your son ahead. My son does. He's on Jacob Media Sports with Rob Ellis. Rob Ellis is certainly a famous sports person here. My son and I have Rover Sports in this room with Dr. Steve Lewis, another doctor, and Coach Josh Daishi, who formerly coached D1 college basketball teams.
Oh, nice.
And we have a lot of guests and a lot of friends. And my brother Doug, who you know, is my youngest brother, is a sports agent for many of the NFL football players, retired football players. And we travel a lot. My son and I, we love to golf and we love to travel together. I have one son and a nice daughter. And basically, for instance, the Super Bowl's coming up. We're going to be traveling with, and staying in the media hotel. We're going to be on Radio Row doing shows every day
great. That's so
with
great.
FanDuel and other things. And my son, we cover the NFL draft and we everything college basketball. So my son's also a coach for high school basketball and high school football, and so we do a lot. If anybody's out there on Bruce Grossinger Facebook, you'll see all our stuff. And so we have a great. There was a show growing up called Courtship of Eddie's Father.
Oh yeah,
with Bill Bixby and the closeness of a father and son, and I model my relationship after that.
That's amazing. So my son lives in Colorado, but we do watch the games at together every weekend. We're on the phone or on FaceTime or whatever watching. So I certainly can relate to that. People, let me tell you about my best friend. Remember that?
That's it. That's the theme song.
So by the way, that was Harry Nilsson. He that whole show was all vocals in the background. It was all vocals by Harry Nilsson, who had this amazing voice. And he became a friend of mine towards the end of his life. We became friendly through a benefit we did together and stuff like that. So,
wow, that's a great story.
So when I tell people about Harry Nilsson, I said that song was originally called Girlfriend. It was People Let Me Tell You About My Girlfriend, but then he changed it for the show.
His best friend.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool story. So let's see. So we don't want to talk about the Eagles, I don't think, today. We're all a little depressed about that.
I'll talk about anything. We talked about it yesterday.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a little sore spot now at this point in the game.
So in Philadelphia, I'll just say, so we do have some bright spots. The Flyers are doing unexpectedly well. Sixers are having a good season so far. And then the Phillies start spring training soon. So a lot of good things.
It's been good. And, the Eagles played in 2 Super Bowls in the last 6 years. And I think their personnel, particularly the offensive side, they're not far off. A lot of problems I have is with their coaching, and I think there will be changes. And part of me, and I'm a lifelong Eagles fan, part of me wants them that sometimes you need a big fall in order to really recover. So I think if they play the same way against Tampa Bay, they will likely lose. And there will be the type of coaching changes from top to bottom to really embrace this personnel team. And hopefully Howie Roseman will start looking at secondary and linebackers because the defense is very woeful, and they probably cannot beat a team with the way the defense is constituted. But the offense is great. There's too many good players to lose 5 out of 6. So, I mean, I always look at it as a chance for I think this year is kind of over, but I'm looking at next year, and if they bring in the right coaching staff, you saw what happened even with Nick Sirianni, how they bounced back. They didn't expect that. But again, like Doug Peterson was here for a short time. Sirianni, they might keep him, but they'll probably eviscerate his assistant coaches. But I'm looking next year to be a bright year.
By the way, so just counterpoint to that, I was listening to Howard Eskin. So if you're not in Philadelphia, Howard Eskin's been on the radio and TV here forever, and he took the counter view. He said, "Why aren't people looking at the players?" He said, "Why is it always the coaches?" Now, I heard
that last night.
Did you hear that?
I heard the whole thing,
yeah.
And I think why, Howard? Because
it's called
you're
leadership.
a homer. Because you're an Eagles homer, and he's very close to them,
close to the team,
and I think he doesn't see. I mean, he might see it, but he'll choose to look past all the horrific lack of scheme, the laziness of the coaching staff, the inability to adjust, which many people, including myself and Seth Joyner. And I do the Eagles post-game injury reports with Mike Missinelli, Seth Joyner. I do that every week, so it's another part of my.
Well, I think you're also bringing up 2 things we just talked about, which is leadership, Audacity, actually 3 things, and safety net. I heard you say. So for me, what we're describing is when the leadership is either too complacent, not audacious to put the right challenges out there, isn't bold enough to make some difficult changes that need to pivot in the moment. I think the Eagles went the mid-season of the flipping to a little complacency, a little falling back on the safety net. We've got a great, offensive line or whatever. And the reality is, if you're not constantly leading and have, get over that safety net.
You got to go week to week. The fact of the matter
absolutely.
is the Eagles became so predictable in their offense, particularly. As a fan, you could just look at the formation, know exactly what play they're running. And you're up against professional coordinators on the other team and professional players who prepared for them. And particularly the 49ers gave the whole blueprint on how to destroy the Eagles through the middle, through the slant, through the running game. And at the same time, you have guys like Jordan Davis, who's getting fined every week for being, frankly, lazy and overweight. You have Jalen Carter, who is a good player but basically ran out of gas. So you have this vaunted defensive line that's not stopping anybody on the run. You have basically a lot of injuries, and also you basically put all your money in Jalen Hurts, and you're just bringing guys off the scrap heap, and you're also not being innovative.
The offensive line too, by the way, is not what it was last year. I don't believe either. It was
we lost Sayamalo, who I think was underrated. His loss is felt. Cam Jurgens has been injured off and on. Landon Dickerson's had an average year, not a bad year, but an average year. And obviously, Kelsey and Lane Johnson, are not having. They're better than average, but they're not having the exemplary years. So you introduce all these factors, plus Jalen Hurts with a kind of chronic knee problem, different scheme, not able to run the RPO.
Right, your safety net is not so safe.
And also you're kind of crumbling.
Can you fix Jalen for next year, by the way? Could you take care of that?
If you could, if they let me put some stem cells in there. I actually know them, but it's very political.
I'm sure.
So I deal with mostly retired players, so I don't have to deal with the politics of the team.
Right.
But that's the story.
Just before our break, which will be in just a few seconds, you're an entrepreneur. All entrepreneurs have disruptions and challenges and things that get in the way. You mentioned a little bit at the very beginning. Anything that comes to mind, things you've had to overcome in your practice and the growth of your businesses?
Well, I think every doctor in the last 30 years has dealt with death by 1,000 cuts. The reimbursement, as any doctor you talk to, and you manage wealth of doctors, it's incredibly daunting. And nobody's going to feel sorry for you. Right. But basically, the governmental intrusion in healthcare is something you don't have in law because you're bridled against it. But no, I managed to basically always transition from all hospital to then all office to doing procedures, now doing fee-for-service procedures, and constantly evolving while in parallel doing consultant work in the forensic business. I've always tried to be ahead of the curve because I break even on my healthcare. Being a doctor,
Wow.
I break even, in order to provide the care I want, but I augment that with maybe 5% fee for service, working with cases and lawyers and narratives and depositions. I've been able to augment and supplement and maintain my income through alternative measures. And so that's been challenging, but I don't talk about it much because I don't want to be viewed as an oppressed person.
So you really but it is a challenge, and I know this from a lot of docs, and you met it really by diversification, which is a big buzzword in my business too.
Evolution and diversification,
Yep.
and not being afraid to just say, I'm not going to set foot in the hospital again. I can't make money here. I like to do it. I paid my dues. Or just saying I've got to become procedure-oriented. 80% of my job is doing procedures and just evolving and becoming good at something and focusing on something and just keeping a narrow focus, not trying to always keep your eye on home base.
And you're a forward-looking guy, and we'll talk more about that after the quick break.
Attention employers, ready to secure your business? Verify Protect provides fast, accurate, and secure background checks. Ever wonder who's really joining your team? Don't gamble with uncertainty. Choose Verify Protect for nationwide, lightning-fast employee background screening. Forget AI glitches. Our pros review each detail. Why Verify Protect? Picture this. Flexibility tailored by your hiring team. Integration, customization, and online ease. Your rules. Discover legal and criminal checks, employment and education verification, financial and social insight, and government and housing checks. Your business shield starts here. Visit verifyprotect.com today and schedule a game-changing call. Don't play with dice with your hires. Verify Protect, your pre-employment screening experts.
Go from there. We are back on Founders Forum, and this is a great time to, we were talking about forward-looking. We're going to get there in a second, but in the meantime, I know, Bruce, you have an interesting culture in your practice and in your business, and Ange loves to talk about that, so let me give it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and not only do I love to talk about it, I love the intersection between, all things Philly, entrepreneurs, sports, and, we were talking offline. We've had Dave Raymond on the show before, the original Philly fanatic. I've heard some amazing stories about this unique culture that you've also built. And, tell us about that, because when you think about medicine, delivery, patient care, a fun culture isn't normally what you think about. So tell us how you've built that. How do you actually even look for people to join your culture that embody that, what makes the right fit inside your organization?
Well, I think the right fit is chemistry. I've had Al Zafiri and Tracy Daly for 25 years as managers. So I think if you create a good culture, you take care of people financially, you offer them bonuses, you offer them elevation financially, but you also are a family. So, and when inevitably their kids get sick, they get COVID, their parents always trying to lean into being nicer to them, giving time off, and the people that are truly valuable will not take advantage of that. And people who love and respect me, and they know how hard I work as a guy in my early 60s now, but the energy of a 30-year-old. But a lot has to do with all my physician extenders. But when somebody comes to the office as a patient, they're welcomed. They sit right across from me. We do everything longhand, and we dictate everything. We don't use all these EMRs, all this boilerplate stuff. The government's trying to push us into cookbook menus, but we've resisted that, treating everybody as an individual and making them feel special. And that's part of our secret sauce, and never giving up. And dealing with people in pain, not dealing with opioids at all, because we think that that's poison, but basically just looking in the eye and never saying to anybody in 33 years, you have to live with your pain. We've never told somebody you have to live with it. We'll always have another strategy, an alternative measure. We'll always change things up and never giving up on people. That's how you maintain
you're treating
a practice
them,
long-term.
you're holistically treating them as a complete entity and not just isolated pain area. So I'm sure you're going to tell us about that. And I love that story because Mark and I have been sharing some ailments over the last couple of months, and I've been dealing with a nagging hip thing that has been rectified in itself, I should say, the last little bit
Dr.
here.
Bruce can help you with that.
Exactly. I'm obviously we talk about stem cells, but what are you seeing out there in terms of what's exciting for people right now in terms of new alternatives?
By the way, before you say that, I just want to say there's a lot of overlap with the guest we had a few weeks ago on Dr. Scott, and they know each other.
Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Fried is a great guy. I've known him. He's about a year older than me, but when I was at Parkview, he was a guy I looked up to, an orthopedics and hand surgeon, and really a trailblazer. Scott Fried is a trailblazer, unbelievable amount of energy, very well liked by everybody. So yes, I emulate him.
I think you're a lot like him. I think you give yourself more credit too, because I think you're a trailblazer as well in what you do. I think I see a lot of parallels between what the two of you guys do. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying. I think that's important because the world we need alternative, things that don't include opioids, and we need to understand the causes of root pain. That's a whole other show. And I love that you're treating people holistically in that way.
We can definitely do that because as a pain neurologist, I've got to understand the neurochemistry, and a lot of what I treat, for instance, just look at concussion for a moment. I'll look at enhancing dopamine. The old way of treating concussion is stay in a dark room and wait to get better. That's not the way we treat concussions with our professional athletes. We basically use a lot of vitamin infusions, IV infusions. It's another part of my practice. But also dopamine supplementation. People that need neurostimulants, again, they're controlled substances, but there are certain people that might need Ritalin, Adderall, Cylert for a period of time that jumpstart the brain and to induce neuroplasticity of the brain. So that's a real fun part of my practice is it's everything. It's all in there, but it's all overlapping because the brain, athletes that have concussions and also have orthopedic injuries and also using PRP, platelet-rich plasma, or stem cells. The patient's own stem cells in an operative setting to basically, to cultivate and basically instill and transplant tissues and have them walk out of there and really almost no need for therapy and ice. That's exciting. So, and a lot of the people the professional athletes, I'm on their short list of people that come in. One guy who is a former linebacker, he came in about a month ago. I did a whole stem on his back on multiple areas. And I worked with him, I saw him 3 days later and I'm feeling good. And this is a guy who golfs every single day and lives in Arizona and there's no downtime. And he just seamlessly went through it. He had that procedure before. There was minimal pain. And there's a big group that's kind of taken the area, but I'm not going to mention their name. They put enough into They have 2 letters and another name. And I think they're kind of the Walmart of regenerative medicine, but because they're so dominant, they're driving a lot of patients to them. The only thing good really about them, other than taking away, people that need boutique care and not a guy who's been a doctor for 30 days, doing work that I've been doing for 30 years, that's frustrating. But they are creating a level of awareness of regenerative medicine. So that's a good thing.
Guys, we have about 2.5 minutes left. As always, time flies really fast on the show. Real lightning round of questions. 3-year vision. We're looking back. It's January 2027. We're looking back on the last 3 years. What would have to happen to you, Dr. Bruce, in terms of your professionally, personally, and anything else you want to add into it in terms of, for that to be a successful 3-year period in your life?
Well, I want to continue to grow and evolve, to maintain my good health, maintain a balance in my life between family, which is the core, my practice, and friends, in balancing my life, staying healthy, and constantly growing the practice and helping people and creating enthusiasm and happiness in my patient population. Love that.
And tell me about your thoughts around your legacy. You've done a lot of things, and I know that's of concern to you.
Well, I have a daughter who's at Penn who's going to be studying medicine. She does have a particular, we haven't even spent a minute really trying to get her to mimic me.
We should say her name's Sutton.
Her name is Sutton Grossinger. Very proud of her. And she's always been an all-star. And so, so I'm looking at, a lot more education for her, medical school. And even in my 60s, I don't want to let her down. I want to be able to continue. I want to provide for her. And my legacy would be being a good parent, good doctor, and somebody who is nice to people in their lives. That would be my legacy.
I like that very much. And then one other thing, if you could speak to your younger self, looking back, what advice would you give to you?
Do exactly what you did. Just don't be afraid to have fun, to dance around the hospitals, dance at the operating room, sing, be funny. You'll always, if I had to be something other than a doctor, it would be a comedian. And that's always part of me. I'm struggling, and so I'm now, after the first year where I was Marcus Welby and I did draw flies, I started being funny, and that's a secret sauce. Nobody could figure me out after that.
So continue to be fun, audacious, have a great time.
Just enjoy every moment. Enjoy every moment. That's what I'd tell anybody.
I love it.
For their lives.
Great way to go. And we are out of time. So thank you for joining us today on Founders Forum. And thank you very much, Bruce, for being here. Dr. Bruce Grossinger.
Thank you, Ange.
Thank you, Ange. Everyone have a great day and look forward to seeing you all or talking to you next week.